10 years ago, summer came to Montana with promises nobody should have believed. The brochure looked professional, glossy paper, smiling children around campfires, bold letters declaring Montana Youth Discovery Program, build character, explore nature, create lasting memories. The kind of thing parents wanted to believe in when their 8-year-old daughter needed something more than suburban streets and shopping malls. Cole Brennan had held that brochure in his calloused hands. 41 now, but 31 then, still married then, still believed the world made sense if you followed the rules. Still thought leather patches and motorcycle clubs were the most dangerous thing in his life. He had been wrong about everything. Abby had packed her small backpack herself, pink with purple straps, rolled her sleeping bag tight the way he taught her, stood on the porch of their house in Bozeman wearing new hiking boots and a smile that could break your heart just remembering it. The program director had driven up in a clean van, white, no dents, registration current. Victor Kane stepped out wearing khakis and a pullover sweater. 47 now, but 37 then. Hair neat, smile warm, handshake firm. The kind of man who made parents relax, who made mothers say what a nice young man, who made fathers think their daughters were in good hands. Cole had shaken that hand, had watched Abby climb into the van, had waved as it pulled away, had gone back inside to his wife Karen and said the thing parents always said when they were trying to convince themselves. She'll have a great time. She'll learn so much. She'll be fine. 2 weeks later, the phone call came. Not from Victor Kane, from a park ranger. Words that turned the world into broken glass. Missing. Search ongoing. No sign. Doing everything we can. The search lasted 6 months. Cole rode out every day those first weeks, his Harley tearing through Gallatin National Forest on trails that went nowhere. His brothers from Hells Angels Montana chapter riding beside him, searching, calling her name until voices went raw, finding nothing but trees and silence and the slow death of hope. They found her body when winter released its grip. Miles from the camp, hypothermia, the medical examiner said. Must have wandered off, got turned around. Tragic accident. The kind of thing that happened sometimes despite everyone's best intentions. The investigation closed fast. Victor Kane provided records, testimony, witnesses who said he had done everything right, had searched, had called authorities immediately, had been devastated by the loss. The system looked at a respected program director and a dead child and decided which story was easier to believe. Cole's marriage ended 3 months after they buried Abby. Karen looked at him one morning and said, "I can't do this anymore. Can't look at you, can't stay in this house, can't keep pretending we'll ever be okay." She left on a Tuesday, filed papers on Thursday, signed them without asking for anything except distance. Cole sold the house, sold everything that reminded him of being a father, packed what fit on his bike, and left Bozeman without saying where he was going. Left Hells Angels too. Told Nash, the chapter president, that he needed to ride alone for a while. That while had lasted 10 years. 10 years of highways, of towns with no names, of motel rooms and diners and gas stations where nobody asked questions. 10 years of trying to outrun the memory of a pink backpack and a smile and the sound of a van pulling away, while he waved like an idiot who believed in safety. The brochure had promised lasting memories. That much at least had been true. Now it was November again, and Montana winter was coming early. Cole rode Highway 191 through the Gallatin National Forest because some wounds you couldn't leave behind. You just learned to carry them different. The blizzard hit around midnight, snow thick enough to cut visibility to nothing. Wind that turned every gap in his leather into a knife. The kind of cold that killed if you made mistakes. Cole had made enough mistakes for one lifetime. He rode careful. No rush. Nowhere to be. Just movement because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant the kind of pain that never quite faded. He almost missed it. The dark streak across the snow. Too deep to be mud. Too red to be anything but wrong. Cole eased off the throttle, his Harley's engine dropping from roar to rumble. He stopped, boots crunching on packed snow as he dismounted. The wind screamed, but underneath it something else. Something that made the hair on his neck stand up. More streaks, leading off the highway into the forest. Tire tracks veering sharp. Trees with bark scraped fresh. Snow trampled like something had been dragged fighting. Cole stood there longer than he should have. Every instinct screaming at him to get back on the bike and ride, to not see this, to not get involved, to do what he had done for 10 years, which was keep moving and let other people handle their own disasters. But he thought about Abby, thought about pink backpacks and promises that turned into lies, thought about how many times someone could have stopped and didn't, how many chances existed to change an outcome before it became a closed file and a death certificate. He pulled his flashlight, stepped off the highway into the forest, followed the tracks deeper into trees that creaked under the weight of ice. The hunting shed appeared like a cancer, old wood warped by weather, roof sagging under snow, the kind of place that should have been empty, was supposed to be forgotten. But the door hung open and the smell that came out was wrong. Damp and metallic and something else that made his gut twist. Cole pushed the door wider. The hinges screamed. He swept the flashlight beam across the interior and froze. 3 women hung from a rough wooden beam, hands bound behind them with zip ties. Ropes cinched under their arms, keeping their feet inches off the ground. Bodies swaying slightly in the draft like forgotten laundry. Their faces were wrong colors, lips blue, skin mottled, eyes half open but not seeing. Not yet dead, but close enough that the difference barely mattered. Cole moved, no thought, no hesitation, just the muscle memory of someone who had spent 20 years being the kind of man who fixed problems with his hands. His knife flicked open. The blade caught the flashlight beam, and he cut the first rope. The nearest woman dropped. Cole caught her before she hit the floor, his arms wrapping around her waist. She was light, too light. Her breath came in short gasps that sounded like breaking glass. She looked up at him, eyes struggling to focus. Then they locked on the patch on his leather jacket. Hell's Angels. Skull and wings. The symbol most people crossed the street to avoid. Her face went from relief to terror in the space of one heartbeat. Please. The word barely sound. More breath than voice. Please, no. Cole set her down gentle. Step back. Hands up. The universal gesture of harmless. Trying to show he wasn't the threat even though everything about him said otherwise. I'm not here to hurt you. His voice came out rough. A decade of not talking to people will do that. We need to leave now. He cut the second rope. This woman was younger, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She hit the floor and tried to crawl away from him, got maybe 2 feet before her body gave out. The third rope. The third woman was barely conscious. Her head lolled when he lowered her down, pulse so thin he had to press hard to find it. Cole stripped off his leather jacket. The cold hit him immediate and sharp, but he didn't care. He wrapped it around the first woman's shoulders, then pulled the emergency blanket from his saddlebag. The silver foil crinkled as he draped it over the other 2. They huddled together, 3 women trying to process being alive, trying to understand if the man with the knife and the patch was rescue or just a different kind of nightmare. Cole backed toward the door, maintaining distance, giving them space to breathe and decide whether to trust or run. Can you walk? Not a question, just assessment. The oldest one nodded, maybe 40, dark hair plastered to her skull with sweat and melting snow. She pulled the jacket tighter and stood, legs shaking but holding. The second one tried, made it halfway before collapsing. Too weak, too cold, too close to done. The third didn't move at all. Cole looked at the shed, at the women, at the blizzard outside. Did the math in his head, 5 minutes to get them somewhere warm or they died anyway. 10 minutes and hypothermia won. 15 and it wouldn't matter who found them. There's a garage. Mile west. We go now. The oldest woman met his eyes. Hers were sharp despite the cold, despite the fear, the kind of eyes that had seen bad things before and learned to keep functioning. Why should we trust you? Cole could have said a lot of things, could have explained he wasn't what the patch made him look like, could have promised he was different, could have tried to convince them with words. Instead, he just told the truth. Because you don't have another choice. He bent and lifted the unconscious woman, cradled her like she weighed nothing, like she was made of glass and he was terrified of breaking what was already so close to shattered. Then he walked out into the blizzard without checking if they followed. They did. The garage was exactly what it sounded like, abandoned, metal walls, concrete floor, the kind of place mechanics used before they went out of business and left their ghost behind. Cole kicked the door open with one boot, set the woman down on a tarp near the back wall, moved fast. Efficiency born from necessity. Found a metal drum, wood scraps, lighter from his pocket. The fire caught on the third try. Flames small at first, then growing, pushing back the dark, creating a circle of warmth that felt like the first good thing any of them had experienced in a long time. The three women gathered near the heat, not close to Cole, as far from him as the small space allowed while still getting the fire's benefit. They watched him the way rabbits watched wolves, ready to bolt, knowing they probably couldn't outrun but unable to stop the instinct. Cole stayed by the door, leaned against the cold metal, lit a cigarette he didn't really want, and watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling. Nobody spoke for a long time, just the sound of wind outside, fire crackling, breath slowly steadying into something that didn't sound quite so much like dying. The oldest woman finally broke the silence. "Who are you?" Cole took a drag, let the smoke fill his lungs, exhaled slow. "Nobody important. You have a Hell's Angels patch." "Yeah. So you're not nobody." Cole looked at her, really looked, saw past the hypothermia and the fear, saw someone who was used to asking hard questions, who made a living getting answers from people who didn't want to give them. "Name's Cole. That's all you need." The second woman spoke up, younger, 30-something. Her voice shook, but she pushed the words out anyway. "Did you?" The sentence died. She tried again. "Are you with them?" Cole knew what them meant, knew what she was asking, knew that to them he looked exactly like another predator. Just a different patch, no. One word, no elaboration, no explanation, just the flat truth. The third woman stirred, eyes fluttering open. She looked around the garage like someone waking in hell and finding it colder than expected. Her gaze landed on Cole and she flinched. "It's okay." The oldest woman reached over, put a hand on the youngest shoulder. She paused, choosing words carefully. "He's not with them. How do you know?" "Because we're not hanging in that shed anymore." The logic was sound even if the trust wasn't there yet. The youngest woman pulled the emergency blanket tighter, nodded once, didn't look at Cole again. Time passed. The fire burned. Cole added more wood when it got low. The women thawed, literally and figuratively. Color returned to faces, shaking decreased, breath evened out into something approaching normal. The oldest woman was first to attempt standing. She made it, walked to the small window, looked out at the blizzard still raging. "We need to contact someone." Cole nodded, didn't reach for his phone, didn't make assumptions about what came next. "Who?" The woman turned, studied him with those sharp eyes. "You really don't know who we are?" "Should I?" She almost smiled. The expression looked painful on a face that had been so close to frozen. "I'm Marlene Barrett. I run Bridger Child Protection Services in Bozeman. This is Rowan Voss, social worker, and Hannah Pierce, case manager." Cole absorbed that, understood immediately why they were hanging in a shed, understood what kind of business they had interrupted, understood that whoever put them there wasn't done. You investigate someone, not a question, a statement. Marlene nodded. "Someone who didn't like being investigated." "We were close." Rowan's voice stronger now, too close. Hannah sat up. Her face was young, late 20s, the kind of face that believed in systems and rules and justice, the kind that learned hard lessons when those things failed. "They took us 4 days ago, said we had 48 hours to tell them where the kids were. We didn't tell." Cole went very still, that particular kind of still that came before violence. That preceded the kind of decisions that couldn't be undone. "What kids?" Marlene walked back to the fire, sat down heavy like the weight of the answer was too much to hold standing. 6 children, all part of an investigation we'd been running for 4 months. We suspected trafficking, a network operating through youth programs, outdoor camps, educational opportunities, the kind of things desperate parents wanted to believe in. Rowan picked up the thread. "We found a pattern, 14 kids over 2 years. Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, all from unstable homes, all vanished into programs that sounded legitimate. All ended up listed as runaways or accidents when they disappeared." Hannah's voice went quiet. "We couldn't wait for enough evidence to satisfy the bureaucracy. So we hid the 6 we knew were targeted, moved them to a safe house. Thought we were protecting them. Marlene finished. Then they came for us instead. The garage fell silent again. Cole stared at the fire, watching flames consume wood, thinking about Abby, about smooth-talking program directors, about how easy it was for children to vanish when adults decided not to see. His hands clenched, released, clenched again. Where are the kids now? Marlene met his eyes. Safe. We didn't tell. They can hang us, beat us, leave us in the snow. We didn't tell. Cole believed her, saw the truth in how she held herself, in how all three of them had stayed quiet despite knowing what it would cost. How long before they figure it out another way? Marlene's jaw tightened. If we're dead, maybe never. If we're alive and talking. Soon, so they'll come back. Yes, Cole nodded, pulled out his phone. No signal this deep in the forest, but that would change once they got closer to the highway. We move in 5 minutes. Can you walk? All three women stood, proving they could, proving they would. Rowan stepped forward, closer to Cole than she'd been since the shed. Why are you helping us? Cole looked at her. Saw the question behind the question. Saw her trying to figure out what his angle was, what he wanted in return. What price came with rescue from a Hell's Angel? He could have said a lot of things, could have explained about Abby, about 10 years of riding, about how sometimes the universe gave you a chance to do the right thing, even if it was too late to matter for the people you'd already failed. Instead, he just said the simplest truth, because you're still alive. They left the garage in a line. Cole first, breaking trail through snow, the three women following, using it as footprints, trusting that each step he took wouldn't lead them into something worse. The Harley sat where he'd left it, snow piled on the seat, engine cold. He brushed it clear, fired it up. The rumble cut through wind like a promise that machines at least were reliable. He couldn't carry all three, not on one bike in this weather, but the garage had been 1 mile from the highway. The highway had a truck stop another 3 miles west. Phone signal, people, warmth that didn't depend on burning scrap wood. Cole pointed, follow my tracks, stay close. You fall, I'll know. They did, walking through snow that came up to their knees, moving slow but moving. Cole rode the bike at a crawl, watching his mirrors, making sure none of them dropped, ready to stop if they did. The truck stop appeared like salvation. Neon lights cutting through the blizzard. Semi-trucks parked in rows. The eternal fluorescent glow of a place that never closed because travelers needed somewhere to exist between destinations. Cole pulled up to the entrance, killed the engine, waited for the women to catch up. When they did, he pulled out his phone. 1 bar of signal. Enough. Call whoever you need. Tell them where you are. I'll wait until someone shows. Marlene pulled out her own phone, miraculously still in her pocket. Dead battery, but the SIM card was what mattered. She borrowed Cole's phone, dialed a number from memory. The conversation was short, efficient. Location, status, instructions to send backup and medical and to secure the safe house immediately. When she hung up, she looked at Cole. They're sending units, 20 minutes. Cole nodded, glanced at the truck stop. Get inside, get warm, get food. I'll be here, you're not coming in. Cole shook his head. Better if I'm not there when they arrive. Questions get complicated. Marlene understood, held out his phone. He took it. Thank you. The words inadequate, but all she had. Cole didn't respond. Just watched them walk into the truck stop. Watched the doors close behind them. Watched through the window as they collapsed into booths and waitresses rushed over with coffee and blankets and the kind of concerned faces that came from seeing people who looked like they'd barely survived. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it, sat on his bike in the parking lot, and thought about 6 kids he'd never met. About whether they were really safe. About what happened next. His phone buzzed, text from a number he hadn't used in a decade. Nash, chapter president, Hells Angels, Montana. You good? Cole stared at the message, thought about how to answer, settled on truth. No. Need to talk, got a situation. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Where? Cole typed the truck stop name, added 1 more line. Might need the Brotherhood for this one. The response came back in seconds. On my way. Cole pocketed the phone, finished his cigarette, watched police lights appear in the distance. Red and blue cutting through snow. Coming for the women, coming to take statements and start investigations and do all the things systems did when they finally paid attention. He started his bike, rode to the far corner of the lot, watched from a distance as officers went inside, as ambulances arrived, as Marlene and Rowan and Hannah were wrapped in real blankets and guided to warm vehicles. None of them looked for him. He'd asked them not to mention the man on the motorcycle, had said it would be easier for everyone if he stayed off the paperwork. They'd agreed, understanding without needing details that some help came from places the law didn't need to examine too closely. An hour later, Nash arrived, 55 years old, face like carved stone, eyes that had seen every bad thing and decided the world was still worth fighting for. He pulled up next to Cole, killed his engine, stood in the snow like the cold was just weather, and weather didn't matter when brothers called. Talk to me. Cole did. Laid it out clean. 3 women in a shed, 6 kids hidden. Trafficking network operating through youth programs. The name that changed everything when he said it out loud. Victor Kane. Nash's face didn't change, but something in his eyes went hard. That name means something to you. Cole nodded, pulled out his wallet, found the picture he'd carried for 10 years, even though looking at it hurt. A little girl with a pink backpack, smiling like the world was good. My daughter Abby, 10 years ago, Montana Youth Discovery Program. Same man, same pattern. She died. They called it an accident. Nash took the photo, looked at it long enough to memorize, handed it back gentle, and now he's doing it again. 6 more kids at least, maybe more we don't know about. Nash pulled out his own phone, started texting, fast, efficient. The kind of messages that got responses because they came from someone whose word carried weight. What do you need? Cole had thought about this during the ride to the truck stop, during the hour waiting, during the 10 years before that when he'd ridden alone and tried to convince himself it didn't matter anymore. I need to find those 6 kids before Kane does. I need to make sure they stay alive. He stopped, started again. I need to do what I couldn't do for Abby. Nash nodded, understanding everything that wasn't being said, understanding that this was redemption or revenge or maybe just the only thing that made sense anymore. How many brothers you need? Cole looked at his old friend, his chapter president, the man who had ridden beside him searching for Abby until hope died and there was nothing left to find. All of them. Nash smiled. The expression was not kind, was not warm, was the smile of men who had lived hard lives and learned that sometimes kindness meant standing between predators and prey. You got them. He made one call, spoke for less than a minute. When he hung up, he looked at Cole. Everyone within 200 miles is rolling. 3 states, 180 brothers. They'll be here by dawn. Cole felt something in his chest loosen. Something that had been tight for 10 years, not gone, not healed, but different. Like a wound that finally had a chance to close if he could just finish what should have been done a decade ago. Thank you. Nash shook his head. Don't thank me yet. This gets complicated. 6 kids, federal investigation, trafficking network. We step in, we're going to draw attention. Cole knew that, knew what it meant, knew that Hell's Angels helping with anything made headlines and questions and the kind of scrutiny that made life harder. I know, if you want to keep the club out of it. Nash cut him off. Brother, those kids need help. We help. Everything else we figure out after. Simple as that. No debate, no calculation of cost. Just a straightforward truth that when kids were in danger, you didn't worry about optics or politics or what came next. You moved. Cole felt something else shift. The distance he'd maintained for 10 years. The wall between him and the Brotherhood. The belief that he'd given up the right to stand among them when he left. I walked away. After Abby, I left the club. Nash's voice was quiet. You took time. We understood. Brothers don't abandon brothers just because they need to ride alone for a while. Your patch was always waiting. Cole looked down at his jacket. At the Hells Angels symbol he'd worn so long, it felt like skin. At the thing that made civilians cross the street and mothers pull their children close and police watch a little harder. At the thing that also meant family, meant standing together, meant when one of your own called in the middle of a blizzard and said he needed help, you didn't ask questions. You just came. I'm not the same person who left. Nash shrugged. None of us are. 10 years changes everyone. Question is whether you're ready to be part of something again. Because once we start this, we finish it all the way, no matter what it costs. Cole thought about Abby, about the pink backpack, about 10 years of trying to outrun guilt, about 3 women who had refused to give up 6 children, even when it meant hanging in a shed to freeze, about how sometimes you got chances you didn't deserve, didn't earn, just got handed to you by a blizzard in wrong place and the sound of someone knocking weakly against a wall. I'm ready. Nash extended his hand. Cole took it. The grip was firm. Final, a contract made not with words but with the understanding that some promises you kept even when keeping them hurt. Good. Nash released his hand, checked his phone. First group is 40 minutes out. By dawn, we'll have a perimeter. By noon, we'll have a plan. By tonight, those kids will be safe or we'll know why they're not. Cole nodded, felt a familiar weight of purpose. The thing he'd lost when Abby died. The thing he'd tried to find in a decade of roads that went nowhere. One more thing. Nash's voice was serious. This Victor Kane, if we find him, if we get between him and those kids, there's going to be a moment where we have to choose. Choose what? Between law and justice, between procedure and protection, between doing this the right way and doing it the fast way. Cole understood. Understood that Nash was asking what happened if they found Victor Kane before the police did. What happened if they had proof he'd hurt children? What happened if the system looked like it would fail again? We do it clean. Cole's voice was certain. No revenge, no shortcuts. We find the kids, we keep them safe. We hand Kane to the law with enough evidence they can't ignore it. And if the law fails, then we make sure he can't hurt anyone else. But we do it legal. I'm done letting anger make my choices. Nash studied him, seeing the truth of it, seeing that Cole had spent 10 years learning the difference between justice and vengeance, between fixing things and just breaking them different. Okay, we play it your way. Clean, legal, by the book. He paused. But if Kane runs, if he tries to vanish, if he puts one more kid in danger, then we stop him, whatever it takes. The unspoken understanding hung between them, that there were lines, that they would try to stay on the right side, but that when it came to protecting children, those lines became suggestions instead of rules. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from Marlene. She'd gotten his number before they separated. The safe house location is 2847 Cottonwood Road, outside Bozeman city limits. White house, red door, basement. I told them to stay hidden no matter what. Cole showed Nash the message. That's where we start. Make sure the kids are still there. Make sure nobody's found them yet. Nash was already texting. Wire and 4 others are closest. I'm sending them now. They'll secure the location and report back. Cole looked at the truck stop, at the police vehicles still parked outside, at the system doing its job now that someone had forced it to pay attention. Then he looked at the road, at the darkness beyond the lights, at the places where kids hid and predators hunted and the world kept turning whether anyone was watching or not. 180 brothers were coming. A perimeter was forming. And somewhere out there, 6 children waited to find out if rescue was real this time or just another promise that would break. Cole pulled on his gloves, started his bike. The engine roared to life, familiar, reliable, the sound of movement, of purpose, of finally having a direction that mattered. Nash mounted his own bike, looked at Cole. You sure about this? Once we start, there's no stopping. Federal investigation, trafficking network. Whatever we find, we're in it. Cole thought about a little girl in a pink backpack, about 10 years of roads that led nowhere, about 3 women who'd chosen to hang rather than betray children they'd sworn to protect, about how sometimes you got one more chance to do the thing you failed at the first time, and maybe that chance came from blood streaks in snow and a blizzard in the decision to stop when everything said keep riding. I'm sure, then let's go bring those kids home. They rode into the darkness. 2 bikes, 2 men. The first edge of a perimeter that would grow to 180 by dawn. The beginning of something that would end with children safe or everyone knowing exactly why they weren't. Behind them, the truck stop glowed. Marlene and Rowan and Hannah were giving statements, talking about trafficking networks and youth programs and men who smiled while they hunted. Ahead of them, Bozeman waited, in a white house with a red door, and 6 children who had been promised safety so many times the word had stopped meaning anything. Cole rode faster, not running anymore, not hiding, just moving towards something instead of away from it. The blizzard was ending, dawn was coming, and whatever happened next would finish what began 10 years ago when a man named Victor Kane took a little girl in a pink backpack and taught her father that the world was crueler than he'd ever imagined. This time would be different. This time someone was watching. This time when tap, tap, tap sounded in the dark, someone would answer. The perimeter was forming. The brotherhood was coming. And 6 children were about to learn that rescue sometimes arrived on motorcycles, wearing leather, carrying the kind of history that made people afraid. But fear was just another word for power. And power was just another tool. And tools could be used to build or break depending on who held them. Cole held his steady, pointed it toward Cottonwood Road, toward the kids he'd never met, toward the chance he didn't deserve but was taking anyway. Behind him, Nash followed. Ahead of him, Wire was already moving. Around him, Montana spread dark and cold and full of places where bad things happen when good people looked away. But tonight people were looking. Tonight eyes that had seen too much were watching. Tonight brothers who had learned that leather and patches didn't define a man's choices were choosing to stand. The first part was ending. The perimeter was beginning, and whatever came next would be written in the decisions made by people who understood that some fights you took not because you'd win, but because losing meant children died, and that was a cost nobody with a soul could accept. Cole rode on, the engine beneath him steady, the road ahead clear, the purpose finally real after 10 years of searching for it. He was going to find those 6 kids, was going to keep them safe, was going to make sure Victor Kane answered for Abby and everyone else, and he was going to do it clean, legal, the right way, because Abby deserved justice, not revenge, because those 6 kids deserved rescue, not rage, but because 10 years of running had taught him that the only way forward was through, with eyes open, with hands clean, with brothers beside him. The night was ending, the dawn was coming, and Cole Brennan was finally riding towards something that mattered. Wire reached the house at 4:17 a.m. when the blizzard was dying, and the sky held that particular darkness that came before false dawn, the kind of dark that made promises it wouldn't keep, that said morning was coming when really it was just less night. 2847 Cottonwood Road sat 3 miles outside Bozeman proper. Far enough that neighbors were a concept instead of a reality. Close enough that you could still call it civilization if you squinted. White clapboard siding, red door like Marlene had said, windows dark, snow piled on the porch in drifts that said nobody had been in or out for days. Wire killed his engine 200 yards out. Let the silence settle. Listen for sounds that didn't belong. Truck engines, voices, the particular quality of presence that came when predators circled prey. He heard nothing but wind and the tick of cooling metal. The 3 brothers with him spread out without needing orders, positions that covered approaches, eyes that scanned for movement, hands that stayed loose and ready, not for violence, just awareness that violence might come whether they wanted it or not. Wire approached the house alone, boots careful on snow that would show every footprint. He stopped at the porch, knocked soft. 3 times, pause. 2 times. The pattern and Marlene had told him over the phone. The signal that said friendly, that said safe, that said the person on the other side of the door wasn't the thing they'd been taught to fear. Nothing. He knocked again. Same pattern. Waited. A voice came through the door. Young, male, trying to sound brave and failing. Go away. Wire kept his voice low, even. The tone you used with spooked animals. Marlene Barrett sent me, said there were 6 kids here who needed help. Silence. Then, prove it. Wire understood. Understood that these children had been promised things before. That promises had turned into traps. That adults were the enemy now, regardless of what they said. She said the oldest is 12. That he's been keeping the others safe. That he's scared but won't show it because someone has to be strong. More silence. Longer this time. Then the sound of locks turning. The door opened 6 inches, chain still engaged. An eye appeared in the gap, looking Wire up and down, taking in the leather, the patches, the Hell's Angels insignia that made the eye go wide with fear. You're, the voice broke. You're them. Wire shook his head slow, hands visible, nothing threatening in his posture. No, we're not them. We're the people Marlene called to make sure you stay safe. The door slammed shut. Wire heard voices inside, low, urgent, arguing. Then the door opened again, this time wider. No chain. But the boy standing there held a baseball bat in both hands, knuckles white from gripping. Fletcher Ross was 12 years old and looked like he'd aged a decade in however long he'd been hiding. Thin, dark circles under eyes that had stopped sleeping right, wearing clothes that needed washing, standing like someone who expected the world to hit him and was just trying to decide which direction it would come from. Behind him, 5 more children huddled, watching, waiting, not running but not trusting either. Wire looked at Fletcher, at the bat, at the determination on a face too young to need that much. Smart, keeping them safe. Marlene was right about you. Fletcher's jaw tightened. If you're here to take us, you'll have to go through me first. Wire almost smiled. Would have if the situation wasn't so broken. Instead, he just nodded. Fair. But I'm not here to take you. I'm here because 3 women hung in a shed for 4 days rather than tell bad men where you were. And they asked us to make sure you stayed alive long enough to matter. Fletcher's grip on the bat loosened. Just slightly. Just enough. Marlene's okay. Wire nodded, cold, scared, pissed off, but alive. All 3 of them. The smallest child pushed forward, 7 years old, holding on to an older girl like a lifeline. Same features. Sisters, probably. Did the bad men hurt them? Wire looked at the little one, at eyes that shouldn't have to ask that question, that shouldn't know enough about the world to understand hurting as a concept. Yeah, they did, but not enough. The women are tough. The 7-year-old processed this, then, are you bad men too? Wire knelt down. Slow, getting to eye level, making himself smaller, less threatening. The thing you did when kids needed to feel less scared. I've done bad things, not going to lie about that. But I'm not here to hurt kids, never have, never will. That's a line I don't cross. The girl studied him, looking for truth in a world where adults lied, where promises meant nothing, where safety was just another word people used before they took it away. You have scary pictures on your jacket. Wire glanced down at his patches, at the skull and wings, at the symbols that made parents cross streets. Yeah, I do. Scary pictures keep scary people away sometimes. Like armor. You know what armor is? The girl nodded. Like knights. Exactly like knights. We wear scary things so the actually scary people think twice. The older girl spoke. 9 maybe? Blonde hair tangled, face dirty, voice that tried to stay steady. Marlene really sent you. Wire pulled out his phone, showed the text exchange, showed Marlene's number, showed the address, showed the pattern of messages that proved he was who he said. The 9-year-old read it, handed the phone back. Okay, she looked at Fletcher. I believe him. Fletcher took longer, looked at Wire, at the brothers visible through the window, at the motorcycles sitting silent in the dark, at all the evidence that said these were dangerous men who lived dangerous lives. Then he looked at the 6 kids behind him, at the responsibility he'd been carrying, at the weight of keeping them alive when he was just a child himself. He lowered the bat. If you're lying, we'll fight. Wire stood, nodded once. If I'm lying, you should. Fletcher stepped back. Let Wire enter. The house was cold. No heat, no electricity, just what little warmth came from 6 kids huddled together under blankets that weren't enough. Food wrappers scattered on the floor, water bottles mostly empty, the evidence of children trying to survive without knowing how. Wire did a quick assessment. Medical first, then security, then comfort. Anyone hurt? Fletcher shook his head. Hungry, cold, scared. But nobody's hurt. Wire pulled out his radio, keyed it once. House secure, 6 kids confirmed. All mobile, need heat, food, water. and probably a counselor, but that's above my pay grade. Copy. Medic's coming. ETA 10 minutes. Wire looked at the children, at six faces watching him with a mixture of hope and terror, at the oldest trying to hold it together, at the youngest already crying quiet tears, at the ones in between just trying to figure out if this was rescue or trap. I know you don't know me. Know you've got no reason to trust. But here's what's going to happen. A man called Medic is coming. He's going to bring blankets, food, check to make sure you're okay. Then we're going to figure out how to keep you safe for real. Not hiding safe, actually safe. The 9-year-old spoke again. What's your name, Wire? That's a funny name. It's a nickname. My real name's boring. What is it? Wire smiled. Kenneth. But if you call me that, I won't answer. The girl almost smiled back. Almost. I'm Willa. That's my sister Bryn. She's scared. We all are. Wire's voice was gentle. Nothing wrong with scared. Means you're smart. Another girl pushed forward. 10 years old, holding something in her hands. A phone. Cracked screen but still functional. I recorded them. The bad men. Talking about. She stopped. Started again. About what they do with kids. Wire looked at the phone. Understood immediately what he was holding. Evidence. The kind that changed everything. What's your name? Iris. Iris. That's a good, strong name. Can I see the phone? I promise I'll give it back. Iris hesitated, then handed it over. Wire pulled on gloves from his pocket, the nitrile kind that kept fingerprints clean, kept evidence uncontaminated. He pressed play on the recording. Victor Kane's voice filled the room. Smooth, educated, the kind of voice that sold things, that convinced, that made people believe. The Montana operation needs streamlining. 3 pickups this month, 2 in Wyoming, 1 in Idaho, all through the youth development programs. Parents sign the forms. We have legal cover. Then transport happens during the camping trips. Clean, untraceable. Another voice, younger, nervous. What about the Barrett woman? She's asking questions. Kane's voice went cold. Then we provide answers, the kind that make asking questions a permanent inconvenience. The recording ended. Wire stood very still, feeling the weight of what he'd just heard. The proof, the admission, the casual discussion of children as commodities, of murder as inconvenience. He looked at Iris. You're brave. You know that, braver than most adults I know. Iris shrugged. I just pushed record. Brave would be stopping them. You did stop them? This recording. This changes everything. Wire pulled out his phone. Texted Nash. Then Cole. 3 words. We have proof. Fletcher spoke up. What happens now? Wire looked at him. At the 12-year-old who'd held a baseball bat against the world, who'd kept 5 kids alive in a freezing house with no power, who'd done what adults couldn't or wouldn't. Now we make sure Victor Kane never hurts another kid. And we make sure you 6 get to be children again instead of soldiers. The sound came from outside, soft, wrong, the scrape of boots on wood, the particular creak that came when weight pressed on old boards. Wire's hand moved to his radio, pressed once, the silent alert that said threat incoming. Then he moved to the window, looked through the gap in curtains. A truck, dark-colored, parked where it shouldn't be. 3 men getting out, moving with purpose. One carried a crowbar. Another had what looked like a gun tucked into his waistband. Wire turned to Fletcher. Back door. Now. Take them out quiet. My brothers are out there. They'll get you clear. Fletcher's face went white. They found us. Wire shook his head. They found the house. But they're not finding you. Go. Fletcher moved, gathering the other kids. Willa took Bryn's hand. Iris clutched her phone. The others followed, moving fast but quiet. The way children learned when noise meant danger. Wire waited until they were out. Then he moved to the front door, stood behind it, pulled his knife. Not to use, just to have, just in case talking stopped working. The knock came, hard, demanding. The knock of people who expected doors to open because they said so. Wire didn't open it. The second knock, harder. And then the crowbar hitting the lock. Wood splintering, the door smashing open. The first man through stopped when he saw Wire, saw the patches, saw the knife, saw the expression on Wire's face that said violence was an option he'd considered and rejected but could revisit if circumstances changed. Wrong house? The man with the crowbar smiled. It wasn't friendly. Don't think so. Got reports 6 kids holed up here. Need to have a conversation with them. Wire stood his ground. House is empty. Check if you want. But the kids aren't here. The man moved forward. Wire stayed still. Behind him through the broken door, 2 of his brothers appeared. Silent. Just there, just present. The math changing from 3 against 1 to 3 against 3. The man stopped. This isn't your business. Wire tilted his head. See, that's where you're wrong. The moment you broke that door, it became my business. The moment you came hunting kids, it became every decent person's business. And the moment you stepped onto this property, you became the problem I'm solving. The man's hand moved toward the gun in his waistband. Wire's brothers tensed. The moment hung suspended. Violence possible. Not inevitable yet, but close. Then headlights cut through the darkness. More bikes arriving. The sound of engines multiplying. 4 became 8. 8 became 20. 20 became a wall of chrome and leather, and men who'd decided this was the line. The man with the crowbar looked at the odds, did the math, made the smart choice. This isn't over. Wire's voice stayed even. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. The 3 men backed toward their truck, got in, drove away fast, leaving tire tracks in fresh snow, leaving Wire and his brothers standing in the wreckage of a door, leaving 6 kids safe because someone had been there when hunting season opened. Wire pulled his radio. Kids clear. Medic's voice came back. Got them, all 6, moving to secondary location now. Wire allowed himself one deep breath, the kind you took when crisis passed and adrenaline needed somewhere to go. Then he looked at his brothers. Document everything, photographs, broken door, tire tracks, boot prints, all of it. This is evidence now. One brother pulled out a camera, started shooting. Another checked for dropped items, physical proof that someone had come, had threatened, had failed. Wire walked to where the kids had been hiding, found a small drawing on the wall, stick figures, 6 kids, 3 women, and what looked like motorcycles forming a circle around them. Iris had drawn it, her way of processing, of understanding, of hoping. Wire took a photo, this one for himself, for the moment when doubt crept in and he wondered if any of this mattered. Proof that sometimes it did. His phone buzzed. Cole, Wire, location. Wire sent coordinates, not the house anymore. The secondary location where Medic had taken the kids. A different kind of safe. The kind that moved. That adapted. That didn't get found because staying still meant dying. 20 minutes later, Cole and Nash arrived. The full force of what 180 brothers looked like when they decided a thing mattered. Not all in one place. That would be stupid. But in positions. Covering roads. Watching approaches. Creating what military people called force projection, but what really just meant we're here and we're not leaving. Cole found Wire at what used to be a hunting outfitter's supply depot before the business went under. Now it was just empty buildings and forgotten purposes. Good sight lines, multiple exits, the kind of place that worked when you needed to disappear. Inside, 6 kids sat around a space heater, wrapped in actual warm blankets, eating actual food, looking at actual adults who weren't lying to them. Cole stopped in the doorway, looked at them, saw Abby in every face and how they watched him with fear and hope mixed, in how they didn't trust but wanted to, in how they'd learned the worst lessons first and were trying to unlearn them. Fletcher stood, facing Cole, still protecting even though protection had arrived, still being strong because someone had to be. Are you in charge? Cole shook his head. Nobody's in charge. We're just people who showed up when you needed people. Fletcher processed this. Then, why Cole could have given a dozen answers, could have talked about Abby, about redemption, about how sometimes the universe gave you chances to fix what you broke. Instead, he told the simplest truth. Because you're kids, and kids shouldn't have to fight to stay alive. Willa spoke up, the 9-year-old with the tangled hair and the sister she wouldn't let go of. Are you going to take us somewhere? Cole knelt down, getting to her level, making himself less intimidating. Yeah, somewhere actually safe, with people who know how to keep kids protected, but not until we're sure the bad men can't follow. Is it cold there? The question hit Cole sideways. The particular innocence of it, the worry about comfort when survival was still in question, the very childlike concern that proved these were still children despite everything trying to make them soldiers. No, it's warm, has beds, food, people who will make sure you're okay. Willa nodded, satisfied. Then, what's your name, Cole? Are you scary? Cole thought about that, about how to answer honestly. Sometimes, when I need to be, but not to kids, never to kids. Willa seemed to accept this. Turned to her sister Bryn, whispered something. Bryn looked at Cole, then buried her face in Willa's shoulder. Still too scared, still learning that maybe rescue was real this time. Iris approached, holding her phone, the recording still on it. The evidence that could destroy Victor Kane. Wire said you'd know what to do with this. Cole took the phone, careful, respectful of what it represented. You recorded this yourself? Iris nodded. I heard them talking. Through the wall, I thought. She stopped. I thought if I had proof someone would believe us. Cole looked at this 10-year-old girl who'd been smarter and braver than most adults, who'd thought to gather evidence when the world was falling apart, who'd trusted that somewhere someone would listen. People will believe this recording. It's everything. He handed the phone to Wire. Documented, chain of custody, timestamps, witnesses. We do this right or Kane walks. Wire understood, took the phone with the same care Cole had shown. This wasn't just evidence, it was hope, was justice, was the difference between children saved and children lost. Nash appeared in the doorway. We got a problem. Cole stood. Talk. Intel says Kane knows about the house. Knows we extracted the kids. He's moving, consolidating, heading back to his base of operations. Which is, Nash's face was grim. North Star Mine, outside Butte, abandoned silver mine, 40 miles of tunnels, perfect place to hide, perfect place to never be found. Cole went very still, the particular still that came before storms. North Star, Nash nodded, understanding, knowing the history, same place Abby was taken, same place they held her before the end. Cole's hands clenched, unclenched, the physical manifestation of 10 years of anger learning to coexist with purpose. Then we go there, we end this where it started. Nash pulled out a map, spread it on a table, pointed. Intelligence says Kane has 8 men with him. They're holed up in the main shaft, probably planning to wait us out. Figure we'll give up, figure the law will be too slow, figure they can vanish once heat dies down. Cole studied the map, the mine, the access roads, the terrain that made approach difficult. How many brothers can we put on site? Nash did the math. 60 to the mine, another 120 on perimeter. Every road in or out, every trail, every path. Nobody gets in or out without us knowing. Cole nodded, looked at Wire. The kid's Wire gestured to Medic, who'd been sitting quiet with the children, making himself small. None threatening. Just there, I'll stay. Keep them secure. Move if we have to. But they're safe. Cole looked at the 6 kids, at Fletcher standing guard, at Willa holding Bryn, at Iris clutching her phone, at the other 3 who hadn't spoken yet, who were still processing, still trying to understand if rescue was real or just delayed danger. We're going to finish this. When we come back, Kane won't be able to hurt anyone. You understand? Fletcher met his eyes. You're going to kill him. Cole shook his head. No. We're going to make sure he faces what he's done. Make sure a judge hears this recording. Make sure a jury decides. We do it the right way. Why? Because you deserve justice, not revenge. You deserve to know the system worked this time, that adults did their job, that promises kept are possible. Fletcher didn't look convinced, but nodded anyway. The ride to North Star took 90 minutes, 60 brothers moving in groups, staying off main roads, using paths that existed on no map but in memory, the kind of terrain knowledge that came from living somewhere long enough to know every shortcut. Cole led the first group, Nash beside him, behind them men who'd ridden together for decades, who knew each other's moves without speaking, who'd learned that sometimes brotherhood meant standing in cold darkness, waiting for something terrible to be finished. The mine entrance appeared as dawn broke proper. Old steel door, rusted but reinforced. Chain link fence meant to keep people out, but mostly just marking territory. Warning signs that nobody read, because warnings were suggestions to people who'd already decided. Cole stopped his bike half a mile out. The sound would carry in the clear air, would announce them. He wanted silence. Wanted the approach to be something Kane didn't see coming until it was too late to matter. They walked the last distance, 60 men moving quiet, spreading to positions that covered the entrance. That blocked escape routes. That created what Nash had promised. A perimeter. Not metaphorical, actual. Wire moved to the door, picked the lock with tools that made the job look easy. The kind of skill you learned in places that didn't ask questions. The kind that made law enforcement nervous and criminals more so. The door opened without sound. Wire had oiled the hinges first. Always prepared, always thinking steps ahead. Cole entered first. Flashlight beam cutting through darkness. The mine smelled like memories. Damp rock, old fear. The particular scent of places where bad things happen and nobody cleaned up after. His boots echoed on stone, the sound carrying deeper into the earth, announcing presence whether he wanted to or not. The tunnel stretched, branching, complex, the kind of layout that took time to learn. But Cole had been here before, 10 years ago, searching for Abby, learning every twist, every turn, every dead end that led nowhere except pain. He knew where Kane would be, knew where the main chamber was, where people hid when they thought hiding was enough. The walk took 10 minutes, felt like hours, every step carrying weight, every breath measured, every moment building towards something that couldn't be undone once started. The chamber opened sudden, large space carved from living rock, lit by battery lanterns that cast shadows that moved wrong, and in the center filing cabinets. Desks, paperwork, the bureaucracy of evil, the documentation that made trafficking look like business. That made children into numbers. That made horror into accounting. Wire moved immediately to the files, pulling drawers, photographing, documenting. His hands steady despite what he was finding. Cole. His voice was quiet, controlled. But underneath it, something that said, "Look at this. Look at what we found." Cole moved to the cabinet, pulled the drawer, Wire indicated. Files, dozens of them. Each one a child, each one a name that became a case number, each one a life interrupted, stolen, ended. He flipped through, forcing himself to look, to bear witness, to carry the weight of what Kane had built. Then he found it. The file that made 10 years collapse into one moment. Subject A 2015, Abigail Brennan. Age 8, status liability eliminated, the words clinical. Cold, reducing his daughter to a problem solved, to an inconvenience removed, to nothing more than paperwork filed and forgotten. Cole stood very still, the kind of still that came before breaking, before rage, before the loss of control that he'd promised himself wouldn't happen. He breathed, in through nose, out through mouth, the way you did when panic waited, when violence beckoned, when every instinct said, burn it all down and sort the ashes later. Wire's hand on his shoulder, gentle, grounding. We document it, we preserve it, we hand it to people who will make it matter. Cole nodded, unable to speak, unable to trust his voice. Just nodded and stepped back and let Wire do the work because work was what kept you human when humanity wanted to leave. Nash appeared in the entrance. Found them, 8 men, side tunnel, holed up with supplies. They know we're here. Cole found his voice. It came out steady, surprisingly so. Can they escape? Nash shook his head. Whisper's got the back entrance. Wire's got the ventilation shafts mapped. They're in there until they choose to come out. Then we wait. No rush, no hurry. We just make sure they understand the option set. Nash smiled. The expression was not kind. Already done. Sent a message. Said the mine was surrounded. Said they could walk out or be carried out. Their choice. Response: Kane wants to negotiate. Cole looked at the filing cabinets. At 47 lives reduced to paper. At his daughter's file sitting open on metal. At the proof that 10 years ago the system had failed, and every year since Kane had known he could keep failing children because nobody was watching close enough. Tell him no, no negotiation, no deals, Just walk out with hands visible or wait until federal agents arrive and carry you out in cuffs. What if he has hostages? Cole thought about that, about the possibility, about whether Kane was the kind of predator who grabbed human shields. He's not. Predators like Kane don't use hostages, makes them responsible, makes them have to keep someone alive. Too much work, too much risk. He'll try to talk his way out first. Nash nodded, relayed the message over radio, waited. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15, the kind of waiting that made seconds feel like eternities. Then Kane's voice echoed from the tunnel. Smooth, educated, still performing even now. I'm coming out. No weapons, just talking. Cole walked to the tunnel entrance, stood where light met dark, waited. Victor Kane emerged from shadow like something that lived there. 47 years old. Still looked put together, clean clothes despite the mine, hair combed, the kind of man who believed appearance mattered even when everything else was failing. He saw Cole. His face changed. Recognition, then something else, fear, maybe, or calculation. The look of someone running scenarios and not liking the results. Cole Brennan. Kane's voice was almost friendly. Been a long time, 10 years. Kane nodded, as if they were meeting for coffee instead of in the mine where Abby had died, as if time made what he'd done less sharp. I heard you left town, left the Angels, thought you'd moved on. Cole's voice was flat, empty of everything except fact. I tried, didn't work. You're good at destroying things, even things that are already gone. Kane shifted weight, hands in pockets, still performing, still believing charm worked when blood was on the ground. This doesn't have to be complicated. I'm willing to discuss arrangements. Compensation. Whatever makes this go away. Cole almost laughed, the sound bitter. You think this goes away? You think compensation fixes 47 children? Fixes Abby. Fixes 10 years of knowing. I shook your hand and watched my daughter get in your van. Kane's smile thinned. Legal proceedings take time. Evidence gets questioned. Witnesses are unreliable. And men like you, he gestured at Cole's patch. Men with your history make problematic accusers. Cole stepped closer, not threatening, just closing distance, making Kane see the man in front of him instead of the convenient category. Here's what's going to happen. Federal agents are 20 minutes out. They're going to take you into custody. They're going to process 47 files. They're going to hear a recording of you discussing children-like products. And they're going to make sure you never see daylight again. Kane's composure cracked. You can't prove anything. Those files are allegations. The recording is hearsay. I have lawyers. Good ones. Cole pulled out his phone, showed the photo of Abby's file, of the clinical language that made murder into paperwork. Liability eliminated. That's what you called her. Like she was a problem, not a person. Kane looked at the photo, then at Cole. Calculation failing, performance dying, reality setting in. I want immunity, cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Cole's voice went cold. You want immunity for 47 children, for 10 years of hunting, for Abby. He stepped closer, close enough to smell Kane's fear under the cologne. No, no immunity, no deals. You answer for all of it. Every child, every family, every life you treated like inventory. Behind Kane, his men appeared, nervous, seeing the brothers filling the chamber, seeing the odds, seeing that talk time was over. Nash stepped forward, federal agents inbound. You walk out now, you walk. You wait, we carry you. Your choice, but choose fast. The sound of sirens in the distance. Growing. Multiple vehicles. The cavalry arriving late but arriving. Kane looked at his options, at the brothers surrounding him, at the agents coming, at the files that would condemn him, at the recording that would destroy him. He chose surrender. Hands up. Walking forward. Accepting that some games ended not with victory, but defeat so total that pretending otherwise was pointless. Federal agents poured into the mine. FBI, state police, U.S. Marshals, the full weight of law arriving with lights and authority and procedure. Agent Foster took one look at the filing cabinets and her face went hard. How many wire answered? 47? Over 15 years, all documented. Foster turned to Kane. Read him rights from memory. The words mechanical, professional, covering legal requirements while her eyes said she'd seen enough evil to recognize it when it stood in handcuffs. As they led Kane away, he looked back at Cole. One last try at performance. This won't bring her back. Cole met his eyes. No, but it stops you from taking anyone else. That's enough. Kane was gone, loaded into vehicles, driven away to holding cells and interrogations, and the slow machinery of justice grinding into gear. The brothers stayed, helping document, helping preserve, helping make sure that every piece of evidence was cataloged so nothing could slip through cracks. Wire found more. Financial records showing $2.3 million over 15 years. Shell companies, offshore accounts. The full architecture of organized crime dressed up as youth development. Every file went into evidence bags, every record photographed, every piece of paper that proved Kane's operation preserved for prosecutors who would build a case so solid that even expensive lawyers couldn't dismantle it. As the sun rose full over North Star Mine and federal agents continued their work, Cole walked outside, stood in morning light that felt different somehow. Not better, not healed, just different, like a weight had shifted from impossible to bearable. Nash joined him. The kids are secure. Medic moved them to a federal facility, proper protection, counselors, medical staff, everything official. Cole nodded. Good, that's good. Nash was quiet a moment. Then, you did it, finished what you started 10 years ago. Cole shook his head. Didn't finish anything, just stopped it from happening again. Abby's still gone. Those 47 kids are still victims. I just made sure 48 didn't get added to the count. Nash clapped his shoulder. That matters. More than you think. Cole looked at his friend, at the man who'd ridden beside him searching for Abby, who'd stood by him when he left the Angels, who'd come when called after 10 years' silence. Thank you for showing up, for bringing everyone, for... He stopped, unable to finish. Nash understood. That's what brothers do. You call, we come. Simple as that. They stood together in the dawn, watching federal agents work, watching the evidence of 15 years of evil being carefully dismantled and preserved, watching justice happen in incremental steps that would eventually add up to something that mattered. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from Marlene Barrett. The kids are asking about the man who found us, asking if he's okay. Thought you should know. Cole stared at the message, at the idea that children he'd never met were worried about him. That concern existed both directions. That maybe rescue wasn't just about action, but about the connections formed in crisis. He typed back, "Tell them I'm fine. Tell them they're safe now. Tell them adults did their job this time." 3 dots appeared. Then, come see them when this is done. They should meet the person who started the chain of people who saved them. Cole pocketed his phone, looked at the mine entrance, at the place where Abby had been held, where 46 other children had been processed, where the geography of nightmares was finally being mapped and marked and closed. Nash spoke quiet. You coming back to the Angels, or is this goodbye again? Cole thought about that. About 10 years of riding alone. About what he'd found by stopping. About whether belonging was something he deserved or just something he wanted. I'm coming back. If you'll have me. Nash smiled. Brother, your patch was waiting, always was. They walked to their bikes. Behind them, the mine was being secured, evidence protected, tunnels searched, every inch documented so that when trial came, the proof would be overwhelming. The perimeter was still in place. 120 brothers on roads, 60 at the mine, 180 men who'd shown up when called because kids needed protecting, and that was a debt everyone carried. Cole mounted his Harley, started the engine, the sound familiar, comforting. The thing that had carried him through 10 years of searching for purpose. He'd found it, not in running, not in hiding, but in stopping, in listening, in answering when tap, tap, tap sounded through a blizzard. Nash pulled alongside. Where to now? Cole thought about 6 kids waiting, about women who'd hung rather than betray them, about a system that had finally worked because enough people forced it to. Bozeman. Need to check on some kids who probably need to see that promises can be kept. They rode, 2 bikes, Two men, the leading edge of a perimeter that would hold until every child was safe, until every threat was neutralized, until the job was done. Behind them, North Star Mine stood empty, its secrets exposed, its horrors documented, its power to harm broken by men who wore patches that scared people but chose to protect them anyway. Part 2 was ending. The rescue was complete. The evidence was secured. The villain was caught, but the story wasn't over. Not yet. Justice still needed serving. Children still needed healing. And Cole Brennan still needed to learn that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about building something better in its place. The road stretched ahead. The dawn was full. And somewhere 6 children waited to see if the man who'd saved their protectors would come see them, would prove that scary-looking people could be exactly who scared kids needed. The answer was yes. Cole was coming. With his brothers, with his patch, with the understanding that family wasn't always blood and rescue wasn't always easy, but both were always worth fighting for. The perimeter held. The work continued. And Montana mornings spread across landscape that had seen too much darkness, learning to remember what light looked like. 2 months passed between arrest and trial. Time moved different when you were waiting for justice. Days crawled, nights stretched. Every morning Cole woke wondering if today was when the system would fail again, when expensive lawyers would find the loophole, when Victor Kane would smile his way into reasonable doubt. But the evidence was overwhelming. 47 files, financial records showing $2.3 million, shell companies and offshore accounts, Iris's recording playing Kane's voice discussing children-like products, the clinical language of Abby's file, liability eliminated. The trial was set for January in federal courthouse in Missoula, the kind of building designed to intimidate, columns and marble, and the weight of law pressed into architecture. Cole had never been comfortable in courtrooms, had spent too many years on the wrong side of things that looked like justice. But he showed up, every day, sitting in the back row, wearing his leather vest because he wouldn't pretend to be something he wasn't. The Hells Angels patch drawing looks from bailiffs and whispers from spectators, but nobody asking him to leave because he had every right to witness. Nash sat beside him most days. Whisper some mornings. Wire when he could. A rotation of brothers making sure Cole didn't sit alone. Making sure the man who'd stopped on a highway had backup when memory got too heavy to carry solo. The prosecution was led by Janet Cross, 40-something, sharp features, eyes that had seen enough child victims to fuel rage that burned cold instead of hot. The kind of prosecutor who built cases like walls, brick by brick, fact by fact, until there was no gap for lies to slip through. Defense was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive suits, practiced sympathy. The argument that procedures hadn't been followed, that evidence was tainted, that recordings could be faked, that files were just paperwork and paperwork wasn't proof. But paper was all they had. Because when you documented 15 years of trafficking, you left evidence that couldn't be explained away. The trial started on a Monday when snow was falling light outside and the courtroom was packed with victims' families, with reporters, with people who needed to see that sometimes monsters got caught. Victor Kane sat at the defense table looking exactly like a man who believed his charm would save him. Clean suit, calm expression. The performance continuing even as the walls closed in. Judge Sarah Morrison presided, 62 years old, 25 years on the bench. Face that gave nothing away but eyes that said she'd seen every variety of evil and wasn't impressed by new packages. Opening statements laid the foundation. Prosecution methodical. Building the pattern. The scope. The sheer calculated cruelty of a man who'd turned children into commodities. Defense tried sympathy, talked about a dedicated program director overwhelmed by circumstances, about tragic accidents and misunderstandings, about how rushing to judgment destroyed innocent lives. Then evidence started. Wire testified first, walking the jury through the filing cabinets. The 47 names, the clinical documentation of children processed like inventory, photos displayed on screens, each file a story, each story ending wrong. The jury's faces changed as days progressed, shock becoming horror, becoming rage held in check by procedure. Financial experts testified, following money through shell companies, through offshore accounts, through the architecture of organized crime that made trafficking look like business. Medical examiners testified, reopening cases among Kane's documented victims. 14 deaths initially ruled accidental showed patterns when examined together. Hypothermia cases with unexplained restraint marks. Drownings with bruising, inconsistent with water accidents. The kind of details overlooked when cases were reviewed individually. But together they formed a picture. Systematic, deliberate, murder disguised as tragedy. But the hardest testimony came from the survivors. Marlene Barrett took the stand on day 4. Walked to the witness box with her back straight, with the posture of someone who'd hung in a shed for 4 days and decided that wasn't going to break her. Janet Cross approached General. Ms. Barrett, can you tell the jury what Bridger Child Protection Services does? Marlene's voice was steady, practiced from years of speaking for children who couldn't speak for themselves. We identify at-risk children, investigate abuse, work with families and law enforcement to keep kids safe. It's what we were supposed to do, what the system is supposed to do. And did you notice a pattern, starting approximately 4 months before your abduction? Marlene nodded. 14 children over 2 years, all from unstable homes, all enrolled in programs run by Victor Kane's organization. All disappeared, classified as runaways or accidents. But the pattern was too clean, too consistent. What did you do with that information? We investigated, quietly, because accusing someone like Mr. Kane required evidence that would survive scrutiny. But we identified 6 children we believed were next, and we made a choice. What choice? To hide them, to remove them from the system temporarily while we gathered enough proof to shut down the entire operation. It was against protocol. It was risky, but it was right. And what happened when you did that? Marlene's jaw tightened. 3 days later, we were taken, beaten, hung in an abandoned hunting shed, left to freeze, told we had 48 hours to reveal where the children were. We didn't tell. Why not? Because those 6 kids had already lost everything. Family, stability, safety. The only thing we could give them was our silence. So they gave us pain, and we kept their location secret. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that came when people heard courage spoken in plain words. Defense cross-examined, tried to poke holes, suggested Marlene had acted recklessly, had endangered children by hiding them, had brought violence on herself through poor judgment. Marlene didn't flinch. I endangered them by protecting them. Yes, that's the world we live in, where keeping kids safe makes you a target, where predators have more rights than victims, where the system moves so slow that children die waiting for it to catch up. She looked directly at the jury. I'd do it again, every time, because those 6 kids are alive, and that matters more than procedure. Defense had no response to that, sat down. Let Marlene step down from the witness box with her dignity intact and her testimony on record. Rowan Voss testified next, voice shaking at first, then steadying, describing the investigation, the red flags, the families desperate enough to believe in programs that sounded too good, the way Kane operated through legitimate fronts that made questioning him seem paranoid. Hannah Pierce described the files, the documentation she'd compiled, the calls to agencies that went nowhere because Kane's reputation was spotless, and hers was just another social worker crying wolf. Then came the children. The judge had ruled their testimony could be given via video link, closed circuit, protecting them from having to face Kane directly while still allowing the jury to hear their voices. Willa Hayes testified first. 9 years old, sitting in a room designed to be unthreatening, stuffed animals in the corner, soft lighting, an advocate beside her if she needed support. Janet Cross's voice came through gentle. Willa, can you tell us what happened when you went to stay at the house on Cottonwood Road? Willa's voice was small but clear. Marlene said it was temporary, that we needed to hide for a little while, that bad men were looking for us. I didn't understand why. I just knew she was scared. And when Marlene's scared, it means something really bad. How long were you there? 4 days. It was cold. The power didn't work. We had blankets, but they weren't enough. Fletcher kept us together, made sure the little ones ate first, made sure everyone stayed quiet when we heard noises outside. Were you frightened? Willa nodded, then remembered she needed words. Yes, we thought the bad men would find us. Thought they'd take us, like they took Marlene and the others. Bryn cried a lot. She's my little sister. I told her it was okay, but I didn't know if it was. What happened when the men on motorcycles arrived? Willa's face changed. The fear memory shifting. Fletcher thought they were bad men because they looked scary, had tattoos and leather jackets. But then one of them, Wire, he said Marlene sent him. He proved it, showed us messages on his phone, and she paused. He stepped back, gave us space, didn't make us trust him, just waited until we chose. Did that surprise you? Willa looked confused by the question. Yes, bad men don't wait, they take. These men waited. That's how I knew they weren't bad. The jury watched this 9-year-old girl explain the difference between predators and protectors with a clarity most adults never achieved. Several jurors had tears in their eyes. Defense declined to cross-examine, understanding that questioning a child about trauma would only make the jury hate them more. Fletcher Ross testified next. 12 years old but looking older. Responsibility aged you fast. He described keeping the kids safe, rationing food, keeping watch. The weight of being the oldest, when oldest, meant you couldn't be a child anymore. When asked about the Hells Angels, he was direct. I was ready to fight them. Thought they were there to take us, but they didn't. They gave us food, blankets, space, treated us like people instead of problems. And when the real bad men came, those bikers stood between us and them. That's when I understood. Sometimes the scary-looking people are exactly who scared kids need. Iris Holloway testified about her recording, about hearing Kane's voice through walls, about being smart enough to document, brave enough to preserve, 10 years old and already understanding that evidence mattered more than fear. The recording played again in court, Kane's voice clinical, cold, discussing children as product, transport schedules, legal cover through program paperwork, the casual mention of Marlene as an inconvenience requiring permanent solution. When it ended, the courtroom stayed silent for a full 30 seconds. Defense tried to argue the recording was taken without consent, that it was inadmissible, that a frightened child couldn't provide reliable evidence. Judge Morrison shut that down fast. A 10-year-old girl recorded a man discussing trafficking children. The court finds that admissible. The defense may proceed with their case or rest, but this recording stands. Defense rested, understanding they had nothing that could overcome 47 files and a child's voice preserving proof. Closing arguments came on day 9. Prosecution summarized methodically the pattern, the scope, the evidence, the voices of children who'd survived and those who hadn't. Defense tried one last performance, about reasonable doubt, about rushing to judgment, about destroying a man's life over misunderstandings and coincidence. The jury deliberated 4 hours, came back with faces that said they'd seen evil and named it. Foreman stood, read the verdict on count 1, trafficking of a minor. How do you find guilty? Count 2 through 48. Same question, same answer, guilty, 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 48 times, each one a child, each one a life, each one justice delayed but finally delivered. Additional counts, conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, kidnapping, attempted murder of Marlene Barrett, Rowan Voss, Hannah Pierce. Guilty, all of it, every charge, every count, the complete destruction of Victor Kane's defense. Kane sat motionless. The performance finally over. The charm used up. The reality that some crimes were too documented to escape settling over him like ash. Judge Morrison set sentencing for 2 weeks later, gave victim impact statements time to be prepared, gave families time to decide what they wanted to say to the man who'd taken their children. Cole sat in the back row through all of it, silent, holding Abby's photo in his jacket pocket, feeling the weight of 10 years compressed into moments, into guilty verdicts read in steady succession, into proof that sometimes the system worked if enough people forced it to. When the courtroom emptied, he stayed, just sitting, processing, trying to feel something like closure and finding only the hollow sense of battles won too late to matter for the ones already lost. Marlene found him there, sat down in the row ahead, turned to face him. You stayed. Every day. I saw you. Cole nodded, needed to see it through. Thank you. For stopping. For finding us. For... She stopped. For starting the chain that got us here. I just didn't keep driving. That was enough. That's always enough. They sat quiet. Two people who'd been connected by blood and snow and decisions made when giving up was easier. The kids want to see you. Marlene's voice was gentle. They've asked. Multiple times. Cole shook his head. I'm not good with kids. After Abby Aichi, they don't need you to be good with kids. They need to see that the man who saved the people who saved them is real. That he kept his promises. Cole looked at her. I didn't promise anything. Yes, you did. When you cut those ropes, when you wrapped us in your jacket, when you called your brothers to form a perimeter, you promised we mattered. That's what they need to see. That they matter too. Cole nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. Sentencing came on a Friday when winter was releasing its grip and the first hints of thaw showed in melting ice. The courtroom was packed again. Families of 47 victims, the 6 survivors, Marlene and Rowan and Hannah, Cole and Nash in the back row. A room full of people who needed to hear that justice had weight. Judge Morrison entered. Everyone stood. The ritual of respect for law's authority playing out in synchronized movement. Victim impact statements came first. Parents of children who died reading letters. Voices breaking. Tears falling. Each one a small piece of grief trying to fit into words that would never be enough. Thomas Garrett's mother spoke. Her son had been 9 when he enrolled in Kane's wilderness program 8 years ago. Never came home. Ruled an accidental fall. She'd written 200 letters to agencies demanding investigation. Her voice shook but held. My Tommy loved rocks, collected them, wanted to be a geologist. Mr. Kane took that future, erased it, for insurance money and program fees. That's what my son's life was worth to him. That's what any child was worth when profit mattered more than people. She looked directly at Kane. You will never say you're sorry, never admit what you did, but I want you to know. Tommy mattered. Every child you took mattered. And the world knows now what you are. Others spoke. Parents, siblings, grandparents, each one adding weight, each one making clear that the numbers on charges were lives, were futures, were families destroyed by systematic cruelty. Then Marlene spoke. Not as victim, but as someone who dedicated her career to protecting children and learned the cost of that protection. Your Honor, I hung in a shed for 4 days rather than betray 6 children. I'd do it again, because those kids needed someone to stand between them and harm. That's what adults owe children. Protection without calculation, safety without condition. Mr. Kane spent 15 years doing the opposite. He needs to understand that his actions have permanent consequences. Judge Morrison listened to it all, taking notes, face revealing nothing but eyes that held every word. When the last statement finished, she looked at Kane. Stand, please. Kane stood, his lawyers beside him. The performance over, but the appearance still maintained, as if posture could change what came next. Judge Morrison's voice was formal, carrying the weight of 25 years making these decisions. Victor Kane, you have been found guilty of 48 counts of trafficking minors, 3 counts of attempted murder, multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. The evidence presented was overwhelming, the pattern clear, the damage incalculable. She paused. Let the silence build. This court has reviewed 47 files of victims, has listened to recordings of you discussing children as commodities, has heard testimony from survivors who will carry trauma for the rest of their lives, has seen financial records showing you profited $2.3 million from 15 years of systematic exploitation. Another pause. The law provides sentencing guidelines, but guidelines cannot capture the magnitude of what you've done, cannot quantify the futures you stole, cannot measure the families you destroyed. She looked at the courtroom, at the faces watching, at the families waiting. Therefore, on the trafficking charges, life imprisonment without possibility of parole, to run consecutively, 48 life sentences, 1 for each victim. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, tears, the sound of justice landing with weight people could feel. Judge Morrison continued over the noise. On the attempted murder charges, 25 years each, to run consecutively to the life sentences. On conspiracy and fraud charges, additional 300 years to run consecutively. She leaned forward. Mr. Kane, you will die in prison. You will never walk free. You will never harm another child. That is the only certainty I can provide to the families whose lives you destroyed. She looked at the bailiffs. Remove the defendant. They led Kane away. No more smiles, no more performance. Just a man in handcuffs being taken to a cage he would never leave. Cole watched him go, felt something releasing in his chest, not closure, not healing. Just the knowledge that one predator was stopped, that Abby's death finally meant something, that 47 names were finally answered. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered, cameras ready, questions prepared. But Nash handled it with a statement written by people who understood public relations. We witnessed justice served. We stood watch while the system did its job. That's all. The families deserve privacy. The children deserve peace. And Victor Kane deserves exactly what he got. The cameras captured the leather vests, the Hells Angels patches, the visual of men's society feared standing as witnesses to justice for children. The story would run, would make headlines, would complicate narratives about who protected and who threatened. But that was later. That was tomorrow's problem. Today was about walking away from a courthouse knowing one monster was caged. 6 months after the trial, the children's outcomes became clear. Not perfect healing, not fairy tale endings, just the slow, hard work of survivors learning to be children again. Willa and Bryn Hayes went to live with their Aunt Thea Calloway in Missoula. Small house, safe neighborhood. A woman who'd fought the system for months to get custody and finally won when Marlene advocated for her. Willa drew pictures now. Normal things, houses and trees and stick figure families smiling. The darkness still showed sometimes, but less each month. Bryn spoke again. Full sentences, started first grade, made friends. The therapist said both girls were progressing better than expected. That resilience was possible when support was consistent. Fletcher Ross found placement with experienced foster parents in Bozeman. People who understood that 12-year-olds who'd been soldiers needed permission to stop fighting. They gave him space, didn't force affection, let him set the pace. Fletcher started volunteering at Bridger Child Protection Services, helping with younger kids, channeling his protective instincts into purpose. Marlene said he'd make a good social worker someday if he wanted, that his experience made him understand things most people never grasped. Iris Holloway was adopted by an artistic family, people who saw her quiet observation as strength, not damage, who encouraged her drawing and her writing and her need to document. She kept a journal now, not for evidence, just for processing, for making sense of a world that had been senseless. The phone recording she'd made was entered as evidence in 3 additional cases. Other victims, other families, justice that rippled from one brave choice. Thea Ashford found her voice in unexpected ways. 11 years old and testifying had unlocked something. She started speaking at schools, age-appropriate presentations about safety and trusting instincts and how getting help wasn't weakness. Kids listened because she wasn't an adult telling them what to do. She was someone who'd lived it and survived. Silas Ramsey was the hardest. 8 years old and the trauma had taken his words. Specialists worked with him. Patient, consistent, no pressure. After 4 months, he whispered his first sentence to the therapist. 3 more months, and he could speak in full conversations. Not always, not easily, but enough. Medic and his wife fostered him with intent to adopt. The paperwork was in process. The house was warm. The future was possible. The 6 of them stayed in contact. A support network built from shared nightmare. They met monthly at Bridger Services. Just being together, reminding each other that survival was real, that they weren't alone, that other people understood without needing explanations. Marlene and Rowan and Hannah returned to work, expanded Bridger Child Protection Services, created the Bridger Shield Fund, raised money for legal fees and emergency placements in therapy for kids who couldn't afford it otherwise, trained other agencies on recognizing patterns, on trusting instincts, on acting before evidence was perfect because perfect evidence came after children died. They never sent the letter they'd written, the thank you to Cole and his brothers. It stayed locked in Marlene's desk, a testament to gratitude too big for words. To rescue that changed everything but couldn't be reduced to Hallmark sentiment. Sometimes grace existed in silence. Cole visited Abby's grave on a morning when spring was trying and failing to arrive. Snow still patched the ground. Wind still carried winter's bite, but the light was different, softer. The kind that said seasons changed even when you wanted them frozen. The headstone was simple. Abigail Marie Brennan, beloved daughter, dates that made her 8 forever. Words that couldn't capture who she'd been, but tried anyway. Cole knelt, brushed dead leaves from the base, traced her name with fingers that were calloused and scarred and had cut ropes off 3 women who'd hung rather than betray children they'd sworn to protect. Hey, baby. His voice was quiet, private, the kind of talk you had with ghosts. I got him. Victor Kane, life in prison, no parole. He can't hurt anyone else. The wind answered, nothing more. I'm sorry I didn't get him sooner. Sorry I believed his smile. Sorry I put you in that van. Sorry for all of it. A sound behind him, footsteps careful on gravel. Cole turned. Karen stood there, his ex-wife, looking older, tired, but not broken, just different, changed by the same loss but in her own way. I heard about the trial, she said. Saw it on the news. Cole stood, unsure what to say, what was left to say after 10 years of silence. Karen looked at Abby's grave. You did what you couldn't do then. That matters. Doesn't bring her back. No, but it means something. To the 6 kids who are alive. To the families who got answers. To Abby, wherever she is. It means you didn't give up. Cole felt something in his throat. The tightness that came before breaking. I gave up for 10 years. Ran. Hid. Pretended I could outrun it. Karen shook her head. You grieved. That's different. And when the universe gave you another chance, you took it. That's what matters. They stood together in the cemetery. 2 people connected by a daughter who would always be 8, always be frozen in memory, always be the loss that defined them. I'm sorry, Cole said, for leaving, for not being able to stay. Karen's smile was sad. I left too. We both did, in different ways. No blame, just reality. She touched his arm. Brief, gentle. Be okay. Live. Don't let him take any more from us than he already did. She walked away, left him standing by the grave, left him with permission he didn't know he needed, to move forward without forgetting, to carry Abby while building something new. Cole looked at the headstone one more time. I'm going back, to the angels, to the brotherhood. Think that's where I'm supposed to be. The wind blew. Cole chose to believe that was answer enough. He rejoined Hell's Angels on a Saturday when the clubhouse was full and brothers from 3 states had gathered for reasons that were part official and part just existing together. Nash called church. Everyone filed into the meeting room. Serious business conducted behind closed doors where what was said stayed said and loyalty mattered more than law. Cole stood at the front, facing men who'd ridden with him, who'd searched for Abby, who'd answered when he called after 10 years of silence. Nash spoke first. Brother left the club 10 years ago. Had reasons. Good ones. Now he's asking to come back. To wear the patch. To stand with us again. Any objections, speak now, silence. Not the uncertain kind. The certain kind. The kind that said this man had earned his place by doing the thing everyone respected. Standing for children who couldn't stand for themselves. Nash turned to Cole. You know what it means. Being back. The responsibilities. The commitments. The understanding that brotherhood is permanent. Cole nodded. I know. I'm ready. Nash smiled, held out the vest, the patches sewn on, the Hell's Angels insignia that made civilians cross streets and police pay attention. Then welcome home. Cole put it on, felt the weight, the familiar worn leather, the symbols that meant family built from choice instead of blood. That meant standing together when standing alone was easier. That meant protecting people even when people didn't understand why men who looked like threats chose to be shields. The brothers stood, one by one, clasped his shoulder. No speeches, No ceremony beyond the moment. Just the acknowledgement that he'd left and returned and was welcome back because that's what family did. After the meeting, Whisper pulled him aside. Good to have you back. Clubhouse felt wrong without you. Feels strange being back. Whisper shrugged. Everything feels strange until it becomes familiar again. Give it time. Wire joined them. Kids are doing okay. Checked in with Marlene yesterday. Fletcher's volunteering, Willa's drawing, Iris is speaking at schools, all of them healing. Cole felt something ease in his chest. The knowledge that the 6 kids were more than just saved. We're actually okay. We're building futures despite everything. That's good, real good. The work continues, though. Wire's voice was serious. Trafficking doesn't stop because we caught one man. Networks still out there. Other predators. Other programs. Cole understood. Understood that Victor Kane was one monster. That others existed. That the fight wasn't over just because one battle was won. Then we keep watching. Keep the perimeter strong. Keep making sure kids have people who will stop when they hear tap, tap, tap. Wire nodded. That's the job. Forever job, maybe, but worth doing. They walked outside, watched the sun set over Montana mountains. Watched brothers gather around bikes and fire barrels and the comfortable silence of people who didn't need words to understand each other. Cole pulled out his phone. Text from Marlene. Willa's speaking at Montana Child Safety Summit next month. She asked if you'd come. Said it would mean a lot. Cole stared at the message. At the idea of watching a 9-year-old girl who'd been saved speak about salvation. About the ripple effects of one person choosing to stop. He typed back, I'll be there. 1 year after the rescue, Willa Hayes stood on a stage at the Montana Child Safety Summit in Helena. 10 years old now, taller, stronger, still carrying trauma but wearing it different. Like a scar that proved survival instead of a wound that prevented living. The auditorium was full. Social workers, law enforcement, teachers, child advocates, people whose job was protecting kids learning from someone who'd needed that protection and lived to tell about it. Willa held a piece of paper. Notes she'd written with her aunt's help. But when the time came, she didn't look at them. Just spoke from memory, from truth that didn't need scripts. My name is Willa. I'm 10. Last year, bad men wanted to hurt me and 5 other kids, but they didn't. And I'm here to tell you why. She paused, looked at the crowd, saw Marlene in the 3rd row, Rowan and Hannah beside her, Cole and Nash in the back, Fletcher and Iris, and Thea and Silas sitting together. The family built from crisis, from people who'd chosen to stand, because adults did their job. Not perfectly, not fast enough, but when it mattered most, they showed up. Marlene and Rowan and Hannah hit us even though it was dangerous, even though they got hurt. They chose us over their safety. Another pause. Then a man on a motorcycle heard something wrong and stopped. He could have kept going. Nobody would have blamed him, but he stopped. And when he found Marlene and the others hanging in a shed, he saved them. Even though we didn't know him, even though he looked scary. Willa pulled out a folded paper, unfolded it, showed a drawing. Stick figures, 6 kids in the center, motorcycles forming a circle around them. This is what rescue looked like, not police cars and sirens, not social workers with clipboards, but scary-looking people choosing to protect, choosing to stand between us and harm, choosing to be exactly who scared kids needed. She looked directly at the audience. I was taught to be afraid of men with tattoos, with leather jackets, with patches that said they were dangerous. But those men were the ones who saved us, who formed what they called a perimeter, who made sure we stayed safe until the system could catch up. Her voice strengthened. So I'm asking you, when you see someone who looks different, who seems scary, who doesn't fit what you think heroes look like, remember that sometimes heroes wear leather, sometimes they ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're exactly the people you've been taught to fear. She held up the drawing higher. Don't judge by appearance, judge by action. The man who saved Marlene was covered in tattoos, but he cut the ropes gentle, stepped back to give them space, called his friends to protect us. That's heroism. That's what matters. Willa folded the paper. I'm alive because people looked past what they expected and saw what was real. Because someone stopped when stopping was hard. Because adults kept promises even when keeping them hurt. That's what you do every day. And I wanted you to know, it matters. You matter. And sometimes you look like bikers, and that's okay. That's perfect. That's exactly what we needed. She stepped back from the microphone. The auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. Not the polite kind, the real kind. The kind that came from people who understood that a 10-year-old girl had just rewritten narratives about who protected and who threatened. Cole stood with everyone else, hands clapping, throat tight, watching this child who'd been frozen and afraid now strong enough to speak truth to a room full of professionals. After the speech, Willa found him, walked straight to where he stood with Nash, looked up at this man who'd started the chain of people who'd saved her. You came. Her voice was shy, different from the confidence on stage, said I would. Thank you for stopping, for finding them, she stopped, unable to finish. Cole knelt down, getting to eye level. The way you did when kids needed to feel heard. You did good up there, real good. Spoke truth. Willa nodded, then, can I hug you? Or is that weird? Cole hesitated, unsure, uncomfortable with touch that meant connection. That meant being more than just the man who'd stopped. But Willa was waiting, and sometimes courage meant accepting gratitude even when you didn't think you had earned it. Yeah, that's okay. She hugged him. Quick, brief, then stepped back. My therapist says I should thank people who helped. So, thank you. Cole's voice was rough. You're welcome. And Willa, you keep drawing, keep speaking, keep telling people what real safety looks like. World needs that. Willa smiled, then ran back to where Fletcher and Iris waited. Kids who'd survived together and were learning to live together, who understood each other in ways adults never would. Nash clapped Cole's shoulder. Good work, brother. I just stopped. Yeah, and that was everything. They left the summit as the sun set over Helena, rode back to Bozeman, back to the clubhouse, back to the life Cole had rejoined and was learning to live again. The road stretched ahead, the mountains held their places, and Montana evenings spread across landscape that had seen too much darkness, but kept finding ways to remember light. Epilogue came in small moments rather than grand gestures. The North Star Shield became permanent. Hell's Angels partnering with Bridger Services. Training programs. Awareness campaigns. Rides that raised money for kids who needed legal help or therapy, or just someone to stand watch while they healed. The perimeter wasn't metaphor anymore. It was real. Present. A network of people who'd learned that protecting children was everyone's job, that looking away was choosing the predator over the victim, that sometimes salvation came in leather and chrome and looked nothing like what society expected. Victor Kane served his sentence in Montana State Prison. No visitors, no letters, no reduction. Just the slow years of a life that would end behind walls. The man who'd turned children into commodities, learning what it meant to be inventory himself, to be processed and forgotten and reduced to nothing but a number in a system. The 6 kids grew, not perfectly, not without scars, but alive, breathing, laughing sometimes, building futures that had almost been stolen, proving that resilience was possible when support was consistent and promises were kept. Marlene and Rowan and Hannah kept working, kept fighting, kept making sure that other children didn't have to wait for rescue, that the system moved faster, that predators found fewer gaps, that light shone in places that had been dark too long. And Cole rode, not running anymore, not searching for something lost, just existing in the present, with his brothers, with his purpose, with the understanding that he'd never fully heal from Abby's death, but could honor it by making sure other fathers didn't bury their children. One morning 2 years after the trial, Cole was working in the clubhouse garage, hands greasy, mind quiet, just fixing an engine because fixing things was easier than thinking about things that couldn't be fixed. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. This is Fletcher. Marlene gave me your number. Hope that's okay. Cole wiped his hands. Typed back. It's okay. Everything all right? Dots appeared. Then, yeah, just wanted to say thanks. I'm 14 now. Starting high school. Doing good. Wouldn't be here if you hadn't stopped that night. So, thanks. Cole stared at the message, at proof that the kid who'd held a baseball bat against the world was growing up, was okay, was building a life that almost got erased. He typed carefully, "You're going to be all right, Fletcher. You're strong. You kept them safe when nobody else could. That's who you are." The response came fast. "Learn from the best. You and the brothers showed me what protection really looks like." Cole smiled, put the phone away, went back to the engine. Outside the clubhouse, brothers were gathering, preparing for a ride to Billings. Awareness event. Kids and families. The work that never stopped because darkness never stopped. But light didn't either. Nash appeared in the garage doorway. Ready to roll, Cole stood, wiped his hands, grabbed his vest. The leather worn and comfortable and meaningful in ways that couldn't be reduced to symbols. "Yeah, let's go." They rode. 2 men, then 20, then 60, then the full chapter. Engines roaring, chrome catching sun, patches visible for anyone who wanted to see. Some people crossed streets. Some pulled children close. Some saw exactly what they expected to see. Danger. Threat. Men who lived outside law's comfortable boundaries. But some people saw different, saw the men who'd formed a perimeter around 6 kids, who'd stood between predators and prey, who'd proven that leather and chrome could mean protection as much as power. Both were true. That was the complexity, the reality that couldn't be reduced to simple narratives. The ride ended at a park. Families gathered, kids playing, the normal life that should be every child's right, that sometimes required abnormal people standing watch to preserve. Cole dismounted, looked at the crowd, saw Willa and Bryn with their aunt, saw Fletcher talking to the younger kids, saw Iris drawing, saw Thea speaking to a group, saw Silas holding Medic's hand, saw 6 kids alive, growing, healing, proving that rescue was real when enough people refused to look away. Marlene approached, handed him coffee. They stood together, watching the scene. "You did good work," she said. "We did good work. All of us." Marlene smiled. "The letter we wrote, the thank you, it's still in my desk. Never sent it. Why not?" "Because words weren't enough. This." She gestured at the park, at the kids, at the families, at the proof that intervention mattered. "This is the thank you. This is what your choice created." Cole sipped his coffee, thought about a blizzard, about blood and snow, about the decision to stop when every instinct said keep riding. Sometimes the smallest choices had the biggest consequences. "Yeah," he said, "sometimes they do." The day ended with sunset, with families leaving, with kids hugging parents, with normal life continuing because people had fought for the right to normal. Cole rode home. Not alone, never alone anymore. Nash beside him, brothers around him. The perimeter that had started as desperate protection, now permanent commitment. The road stretched ahead. Montana mountains held their places. And somewhere in the gathering dark, other children needed other rescues. Other predators hunted. Other battles waited. But tonight, 6 kids slept safe. Tonight, justice had weight. Tonight, the perimeter held. And Cole Brennan rode with brothers who understood that sometimes the scariest looking people were exactly who scared kids needed. That leather and chrome could mean salvation. That stopping when everyone kept driving was the difference between tragedy and miracle. The engine beneath him was steady, the road ahead clear, the purpose finally and permanently found. He was home, in the brotherhood, in the work. In the knowledge that one person stopping had changed everything for 9 lives. 3 women, 6 kids, all breathing, all safe, all proof that rescue wasn't myth. The perimeter held. Would hold tomorrow, would hold next week. Would hold because enough people refused to let it fail. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the meaning found in blizzards and blood and the sound of ropes being cut by hands that looked dangerous but chose to be gentle. The night was full. The stars were out. And Cole Brennan rode on, not running anymore, just moving forward, with brothers, with purpose, with the understanding that sometimes the universe gave you a second chance and the only thing that mattered was whether you took it. He had, they all had, and 6 kids were alive because of it. The end was really a beginning, the beginning of watching, of standing, of making sure tap, tap, tap never went unanswered again. The perimeter held, always would, because that was the promise. The commitment, the thing that made leather and chrome mean protection instead of threat. Cole rode on, the engine steady, the road clear, the purpose real. And somewhere behind him, 6 kids slept safe in homes that were warm, in families that loved them, in futures that were possible because people had chosen to stop. That was the only ending that mattered. The perimeter held.